How do we improve go-to-market substantially first 90 days on the job? I'm anxious to dive into that with you. I'm going to talk about how do you build an engine around those things so that go-to-market can produce more revenue, more efficiently, more profitably, and more reliably.
What is the biggest mistake you see CROs and go-to-market ops people making in their first 90 days on the job?
I think the biggest thing I see is just trying to tackle too many things at once.
What's the one metric that should fundamentally change if you've done this right?
I think the one metric that should fundamentally change is dependent upon your priorities and your goals. It's also dependent upon what's realistic within 90 days. If we look at like pipeline management, for example, the one metric in a short sales cycle, if it's a 30-day sales cycle, like I'd like to see like a higher close rate. If we've got a 9-month sales cycle, it's going to be more difficult to do that. Welcome to Go-to-Market Science, the podcast for CROs and revenue leaders scaling mature B2B companies. There's an art and there's a science to go-to-market, and we're obsessed with the science. In this podcast, we share tangible, actionable playbooks from the trenches, from what we're learning working as go-to-market strategy and RevOps consultants for our clients here at Union Square Consulting, and candid conversations with revenue leaders in the market that have been there. If this podcast delivers value, we'd love a 5-star rating and a follow. Now let's get into it.
Welcome back to Go-to-Market Science. I'm Rachael Bueckert, and with me today is Eddie Reynolds, our CEO and founder here at Union Square Consulting. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that we recently released in a newsletter called Go-to-Market Ops First 90 Days Playbook. And we're also going to be talking about the CRO's first 90 days as well. So, hey Eddie, how's it going?
It's going well, but I'm excited to get into this because you did a podcast with Warren Zana on the first 90 days for a CRO. We published this newsletter titled Go-to-Market Ops First 90 Days. And I was posting, I think like a week ago or so, like promoting the newsletter. And when I was thinking about promoting it, I was thinking about it through the lens of a CRO and or VP of Go-to-Market Ops. So it's really the same thing is like in the first 90 days, how do you improve the go-to-market engine? And since most of my conversations are with CROs, because, you know, the go-to-market ops people are the ones on my team in this equation, I'm oftentimes thinking about this through the lens of the CRO. But I think they both apply. Like whatever role we're in, how do we improve go-to-market substantially first 90 days on the job? And I'm anxious to dive into that with you.
Yeah, and the conversation with Warren, I believe, was more so like the first things you have to do in a new role, kind of like politically and like making sure you have everyone on the same page and like those kinds of things. And we're talking more like operationally. What are you trying to tackle in the first 90 days, operationally and strategically? So
yeah. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. Did you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, when I posted this, Gary Fox, who's a CRO, commented on my post, and I thought it was great. He goes, I'm going to be thinking very hard about exactly this sequencing in the CRO role. I start in a few weeks, but on top of your points, I'll have to also think about positioning, marketing, offering design, talent management, alliances, comp plan review, sales collateral, sales method. It's a long list. Then I got to put a roadmap together that works with the constraints of leadership capacity I have around me. And that just blew me back. I thought, okay, I've been in my own little world just thinking about how do we build the go-to-market engine? Like, you know, we go in there, and I'm not just talking about like configuring Salesforce. We're going to talk about strategic aspects of the go-to-market engine, but I'm not thinking about positioning. That's just not something I'm an expert in. But when I do my own annual plans as a CEO and CRO in my own company, I'm thinking about positioning. I'm thinking about marketing. I'm thinking about offering design and talent management especially. And so these are all really relevant things, and I'm not going to talk about all those things because that's not where my expertise lies. It's not where our expertise lies as an organization. We don't pretend to be the world's experts in talent management, as important as it is. But we are going to talk about how do you build an engine around those things so that go-to-market can produce more revenue, more efficiently, more profitably, and more reliably. And that is something I'm excited to dive into, which is a different perspective on the same idea that you dove into with Warren.
And shout out to Giri, by the way, longtime follower, always great comments and engagement. We see you. Thanks, man. So today, the newsletter that's based on the podcast we're talking about today, the link you can find out in the show notes. So let's get started. Eddie, what is the biggest mistake you see CROs and go-to-market ops people making in their first 90 days on the job?
I think the biggest thing I see is just trying to tackle too many things at once, trying to boil the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate?
Sure. I was like, I'm going to go into this podcast and I'm not just going to drone on these, like on a soapbox for like 15 minutes. I'm going to stop myself. And you're like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting that.
It's just the first one word answer or one sentence answer I think you've ever given.
Sorry, I just got back home from being out and I was listening to a different podcast and a lot of like one word zingers. So I was trying to follow suit. So a lot of times my conversations are, a CRO reaches out to us and they're like, I'm starting this new job. I need help with, ops. Here's all the things that are broken. And even without me asking any questions, it seems like stuff will just come out. It's like, okay, outbound engine is broken. Reps don't know how to do outbound properly. We're not covering the right ICP. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I can wrap my head around that. And all of a sudden, like we're over here and they're like, we don't onboard our customers very well. And like, we're not tracking health scores. I'm like, okay, cool. And I remember, the first time that I did this, like I started having conversations like this sometime around 13 years ago. So it's been a while. And even when I started this consulting company, I remember vividly going into an office with a CRO and his whole go-to-market leadership team. And I was trying to whiteboard this stuff out. And I'm writing down all the stuff I just mentioned. You got the outbound problems here. You got the onboarding problems here. Nobody's managing pipeline over here. And it literally felt like whack-a-mole. I'm all over this whiteboard and I'm just like, I left this meeting with no definitive conclusions. And I remember telling somebody about this and him just looking at me. Actually, I'll just name drop here. Whatever. This is at a time when I shared office space with Jake Dunlap at Scaled, who I have a lot of respect for. And I was explaining this to him and he was just like, what the fuck? Like, he just looked at me like, what an amateur. Like, you need to guide this conversation. And I was taken aback by that. And I thought like, well, yeah, like I'm letting them jump all over the place instead of asking the hard questions. What is the priority here? And as this has evolved over the years, and I've had many more of these conversations, a lot of times I will start my conversation with, if you could only fix one thing in go-to-market, what would it be? We've published a newsletter on this, the go-to-market ops decision tree, where we like mapped out all these different branches in the tree to get down to a tangible list of things that we could tackle. But it's like, okay, cool. Like, so onboarding is broken and outbound is broken, and, reps don't manage their pipeline very well and they just dump deals into there. And we're getting all this pressure. We've got to implement AI, whatever that means. Like nobody's specific about what they need to implement in AI or what problem they're trying to solve with AI, but we've got to implement AI. And so we're all over the place. And I just try to narrow this down. Like, let's just pick one thing, new business or NRR. And then every CRO says new business. It's like, okay, cool. And then we say, okay, do you want to close more of the deals that you're already generating or generate more pipeline? They almost always say, let's generate more pipeline. Now I can test some of these assumptions and I can push back a little bit, but if we go down that path and then we go, well, is it inbound, outbound? Is it partnerships? Is it PLG? Whatever. We get somewhere and then we look at the outbound thing and we go, okay, how big is the team? And forgive me, I'm probably jumping way ahead here for your questions, Rachel, but if we're just talking about a single sales team and let's say that we want to, and I know in the newsletter, we went down this path of like an example of outbound and pipeline management. That's something we can probably knock out in 90 days. And we're going to have to push back on saying like, I understand that inbound is broken. I understand that onboarding is broken, that our expansion sales is broken. We can't fix everything in the first 90 days because not only do we need to fix the process and go in and like redesign like what the steps are and document that and train the team, update the systems, we've got to actually train people to change their behavior, which is a lot of work. And we need a repetitive management motion of getting the reps on the team, in this example of outbound and pipeline management, to do things differently and hold them accountable week after week after week. And in order to achieve that, that's going to take everything we've got. We don't have time or resources, presumably, to go and fix every other thing under the sun. But if we can do that, now we're generating and closing more pipeline in the first 90 days, or at least we've set the foundation that we will do that after the first 90 days. That's pretty magical. And so that's where I try to push back on people. And I see CROs that are like, they have all this pressure to do all of these things, not to mention AI. And I see this sigh of relief of like, okay, we can achieve that. And And then I would even push back on this sometimes, and I'd say, okay, like, let's think about this short term versus long term. What is in the best interest of the company long term? And the answer is always going to be net revenue retention, right? If our net revenue retention is not good, specifically if the gross retention is not good, meaning renewals or churn, we've got a fundamental problem in our business. Maybe our new business is bringing in the wrong customers. But I understand not every CRO owns customer success. Not every CRO has the luxury of thinking that long term. There may be immense pressure to say we need to bring in more new business. And, we face that pressure as well. At the end of the day, like, you got to do what your boss is telling you. And if a client hires us and they are hell bent on, like, we got to generate more pipeline, we will try to help them do that. But what's in the best interest of the company long term is going to be to really make sure we're bringing in the right customers and retaining and growing them. And then to think about how we add more of those customers. Why don't I stop there so I can actually give you some room to ask some of your questions?
Yeah, well, I wanted to mention, like, and I think you'll remember this better than I do. There was something you said in the newsletter along the lines of the first 90 days isn't about trying to, like, build everything. It's about trying to prove operational change can help or can work. Do you remember that line?
I think I remember that line, looking at it and thinking you wrote it. And I was like, ooh, I like this.
Oh, maybe I did rate it.
Yeah, because, for anybody listening, Rachel writes a lot of these drafts. I always review them. Sometimes I completely rewrite them. Sometimes I like a lot of the stuff that's in there, but I don't think I can take credit for that. I think that was you. Maybe.
Oh,
I don't know.
Well, maybe it was me.
It
was a while ago that we wrote this.
But I think that that's a key point, right? The average tenure of a CRO is something like 18 months. It's not a lot of time. So if you think about 3 months or 90 days, that's what's 3 over 18, 1 over 6. It's like 12% of your potential tenure. Is that the right math? No, that math isn't right. Whatever. It's a big chunk of your tenure. So you're going to come in and you've got 90 days to set an impression. Most CROs aren't going to get fired after the first 90 days unless they do something really, really bad. So are you going to try to tackle everything and just fail at everything? Because, like, sure, if you put a gun to my head and say, Eddie, I want you to document the process for inbound, outbound, pipeline management, onboarding, customer health management, customer success engagement, renewals, QBRs, expansion, I can sit down in front of a Google Doc and write all that stuff up in 90 days for sure. But is that actually going to have a change in the behaviors of the team? Are you going to suddenly see all of these QBRs that are scheduled and run by your CS team in a meaningfully different way such that it impacts your net revenue retention? Those are two very different things, right? It is really, really hard to take an entire team and change the things that they do every day. And so, like, documenting the process is the easy part. Updating Salesforce is the easy part. Even telling management, like, these are the things that you need to look at in the systems so that you can see whether or not the team is executing is the easy part. It's like constantly reminding folks of, like, hey, this is the new way that we're doing things. I need you to follow this. Trying to win people over. People are going to resist change. That's really hard. And if you can do that in 90 days, and we're talking about, like, in this example, outbound and pipeline management, this is basically like, okay, we've got the whole thing that determines whether we win or lose new business deals. That's oftentimes very similar or exactly the same thing as our expansion deals, meaning winning them. At least when I was at Salesforce, like, new business expansion, we had the exact same sales process. I don't ever remember once having somebody tell me, like, oh, this is different in this way. It's just like, we just did the exact same thing, whether that's good or bad. You can debate that in the comments below in the podcast. Please do. I don't know. Do podcasts have comments?
Yeah,
I have a comment on podcasts. They do? Oh my God.
There is a comment section. Yeah.
Maybe I should pay attention to that. And then we've got the outbound motion, which may be for this particular company, like, the most meaningful way that they build pipeline. And so now, like, we've done something that impacts a meaningful portion of go-to-market. That should be enough for 90 days. And then you do something similar the next 90 days. Now we tackle inbound, maybe we tackle the onboarding process. Then the next 90 days, maybe now we, like, really sit down and think through, like, what we do with unhealthy customers and how do we, turn them into, strong chances of renewal. And then we tackle the expansion process. And now in, like, 6, 9, 12 months, like, we've completely revamped our entire go-to-market. That's very meaningful.
Versus just playing whack-a-mole, 9, 12 months later, you're probably still just playing whack-a-mole because you haven't solved any of the root issues that's creating that whack-a-mole problem.
And I can't tell you how many times I've had this conversation with CROs, and then, I'm not trying to plug our services, but they don't hire us. And then I talk to them a year later and I'm like, how's it going? And they still have the same problems.
It's happened recently a few times, actually.
Still trying to, because we just finished Q4, we're recording this January 5th. And there were a number of conversations I had with CROs in Q4 of 2025 that were just rehashes of conversations we had in Q4 of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was like this thing we're talking about. And it's like, so how's outbound going? And it's like, we're still trying to get people to, like, our reps to make more outbound calls. They're still waiting around for leads. And you're like, this was a problem 12 months ago.
Yeah.
Why haven't we fixed this?
Yeah, I feel like we could get deeper into that, but I don't know if we should on this podcast.
You're the host here. I'm just following your lead, Rachel.
Yeah, I don't know if we should get deeper into that. So when a company has like a really complex teams and departments and 15 different segments and products, how do we make the call between narrowing our focus versus adding more resources versus like what should we narrow in on? How do we make these decisions when there's a lot going on?
Well, I think that this is like always a question I have in my mind when we have a customer come to us, because some of the customers come to us and it's like, hey, I've got one sales team. We've got one product. We've got one market. We've got one sales team, one geography. Everybody's doing the same thing. And you're like, okay, that's easy for us. Like, no problem. And then sometimes I'll get somebody that comes and they're like, I've got an SMB team. I've got a mid-market team. I got an enterprise team. I've got an international team. We've got 6 different products. We've got 14 different industries we're targeting. And I'm like, okay, how much can our team do? And then I swivel my chair around and I talk to our team and I'm like, what do you think? And it's like, okay, this is definitely more work, but it's not like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 times more work. It's like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 2 times more work, because you just shouldn't have your processes be that complicated, right? And, I'm thinking of one particular company that I had in mind that's, I think, $350 million in revenue. But when I was at Salesforce, we grew from $5 billion to $10 billion in revenue. And granted, I was only in one segment of that business. There's a really big difference between like how SMB and enterprise sells, for sure. But I did sell 25 different products or whatever it was, and it was just the same exact process. Sure, there was some sales enablement there and some product training. And, I remember we were all trying to figure out how to sell Heroku, and they're trying to teach us like how to understand what the heck a developer does. And none of us understood it. It's like, okay, whatever. Still don't. It's fine. Zero interest in learning that. But, like for the sales, service, marketing stuff, like, this is all the stuff that like we spent a lot of time digesting. The sales process was the same. The territory plan, the account list was the same. So it wasn't like astronomically more work, because if we had like a separate sales process for every single product, for every single, persona that we were going after, like that's not something that I as a sales rep could have wrapped my head around. And so I think, like, I'll give you a concrete example. You take your sales process for new business and then you apply that to expansion. At Salesforce, it was exactly the same thing. In other companies, it may be a little bit different, but it shouldn't be night and day difference such that we're starting from zero and we've got to do twice as much work. And so I think what we do in this situation is we're just looking at this and we're like, okay, how much extra work is this going to be? And you also have to look at how much work is it going to be on management to try to train the team, how many layers of management, et cetera. But it's not 5 times as much work for these 5 different, flavors of this, if that answers your question. I think that when push comes to shove to try to find a solution to this, it really comes down to like, well, how many resources do we need? Like, we can always find another VP of RevOps if we need some help. I mean, again, not trying to plug our services, but that is sometimes when we're brought in. Like, I'm always surprised when I'll meet like a really smart VP of RevOps and like, I need your help. And I'm like, why do you need our help? You seem to know what you're doing. They're like, I just only have so much time in the day. Okay, got it. So then we divide and conquer. They're like, I'm going to go tackle this thing. You guys tackle this thing. We meet in the middle. It's like, okay, great. Like that's something that we can do. That's executable. And I think that that's what it comes down to. You also have to think about like, what is leadership capacity? So this is something like, I'll plug Gary again in his comment that really took me aback, and I'm going to go on my soapbox here. I'm a really big proponent of capacity planning, and I don't take credit for this. One of our consultants uh, showed me the light on this. You can only do what you have capacity to do, right? That applies for sales reps, that applies for marketing, that applies for management, that applies for executive leaders. So you also have to think through the lens of like, okay, if we're going to fix this outbound and this pipeline management process, and we're going to do it for SMB, mid-market, enterprise, international, et cetera, how is that going to roll down from the CRO to the various department heads to frontline sales managers? In this example, I'm imagining multiple layers of management. If you have the capacity to go execute on that, and that SMB manager that has 8 reps under him or her has the time to sit down and say, this is our new sales process, this is our new outbound process. Every week I'm going to look at the reports in Salesforce and I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions so that I can get you to a point where you're doing all the right things in the right ways, then we can execute on that. But if your sales manager is already like drowning, that's going to be really tough. And given that this is January 5th and we just did like our New Year's resolutions and everything like that, I was listening to some podcasts trying to think about what I wanted to do, and completely unrelated to go-to-market or software or anything like this. And people are talking about capacity. It's like, it's really easy for us to say, I'm going to wake up every morning at 4 a.m. and I'm going to go spend 2 hours in the gym, and then I'm going to run for 2 hours, and then I'm going to work 14 hours, and I'm going to eat nothing but like boiled chicken and rice that I cooked from scratch. And it's like, okay, this is why everybody gives up on their New Year's Eve resolutions within like, I think the average is like 10 days. Everybody's given up because you can just add more and more stuff to your plate, and that's a recipe for failure. You're going to take stuff off your plate too. Mm-hmm. So you have to think about, what is the capacity of my management team and my frontline people to go execute on this thing? And if we try to say, we're just going to revamp every process across go-to-market in 90 days, you're going to fail at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you got me thinking of New Year's resolutions and stuff. Like, oh no,
yeah,
I think
what are
I
you
already
taking
failed
off your
mine.
plate, Rachel?
I can't take anything off my plate. All I can do right now is add to it.
We all get 24 hours, my friend.
I gotta take more Mexican food off my plate and put more chicken and rice on my plate.
I say the chicken and rice tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I hate chicken. I like rice, but like, I hate chicken.
Man, I love chicken.
There's a reason it's cheap.
I love chicken, but I meal prep it all the time. So it's like all I eat. So after a while, I'm like, I can't eat this anymore.
Why do you punish yourself?
I don't know, Eddie.
I just had a cheeseburger and fries for lunch.
Oh my God. I could never.
If it's in your macros, my friend, if it's in your macros.
It's not in my macros. That'd be the only thing I ate all day.
We found this new restaurant that it literally tells you like the calories and the protein on the menu. And I was like, ooh, I can fit this in. Like, I'm going to have a cheeseburger and french fries.
Nice.
They were baked fries.
That's very smart marketing ploy though for the restaurant.
Yeah, that's why we went there.
Super smart.
My wife was like, let's go here. We know exactly how many calories it is. I was like, yeah, sold. Let's do it.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't want to take us down too much of a tangent, but I just had a meeting with my personal trainer today and we had to like revamp my food plan. I'm just like, I don't want to do this.
It's not too much of a tangent because whether we're talking about New Year's resolutions or go to market, like what I have found has worked in this business and in my personal life is figure out something that you actually have the capacity and the desire to execute.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out things that you're going to enjoy doing. Figure out foods you're going to enjoy eating. Figure out a way that you can do this consistently without killing yourself. And you're much more likely to succeed at that, right? Like last year I lost 20 pounds and it wasn't anything crazy. I was like, I'm going to wake up 3 days a week and go to the gym. Now it's 5 days. It's ironic that I've actually expanded that. I'm going to go walk 10K steps. I get calls in with you and other people on the team while I'm on my midday walks, and that's it. And it's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot. I couldn't have done that like when I started the business or when I was working at Salesforce. But I got 10,000 steps naturally just because I lived in New York and I had to walk to the subway and back, and it just happened by itself. Now I work from home. So I guess it's just, but if you try to say like, I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. every day and go to the gym for 3 hours, like you're just going to fail at that.
Yeah. And it comes back to like the consistency and the whack-a-mole thing, right? Like if you try to do everything at once and, only eat chicken and rice 3 meals a day, work out 3 hours a day, you're going to fail at that. And 12 months from now, you're still going to be playing whack-a-mole or yo-yoing with your goals, your weight, or whatever you're trying to do. It's the same thing. Like starting out small, trying to make small changes to prove that growth can happen, and then continuing on from there. And you're way more likely to see an improvement in your goals and yourself and whatever you're doing 12 months from now.
You want to know a fun fact?
Absolutely.
Let's say this isn't the case, but let's say that I am 30 pounds overweight and I graduated college 30 years ago. Right? Does it sound like, a good representation of like a large number of people? Do you know what it takes to get there? Let's say you graduated college and you were like in peak shape and you wake up 30 years later and you're 30 pounds overweight. That is 9 extra calories per day. That's it. Because a pound is 3,500 calories. So you're eating an extra 3,500 calories a year. There's about 350 days in a year. So it's 9 calories per day. That's it.
That's brutal. And no, that's not
so
even
if that was a positive thing, think about like, if that was a positive development, like that's all it takes to achieve 30 pounds of growth. Like, and the flip side of that is like just eating 9 calories less or burning 9 calories more per day. Like, but everybody, like they get on these like New Year's Eve resolution bents and it's like, I gotta lose 30 pounds in 3 months. Why? 12 months from now, you're still going to be here, hopefully. So where do you want to be in 12 months? And like when I did my diet last year, I was like, I want to do the lazy man's approach. And I kind of kicked it up because once you start succeeding at something, you kind of want more of it. But the first 6 months, I think it took me 6 months to lose 10 pounds, which isn't like, I'm not getting on the cover of any magazine for that, but I did it like the easy way. I was like, I'm going to eat what I want. I'm going to just walk, go to the gym like 2 or 3 times a week, be lazy about it. And I was like, oh, this is actually very sustainable. Like I could do this for the next 50 years and I hopefully will.
Yeah, there's so many more nuances with it, like hormonal fluctuations over those 30 years, especially if you're like a woman going through different hormonal changes and stuff. But that's crazy. That's
we also had a baby, and fun fact, men do gain weight when their wife has a baby, and it's a hormonal thing. Did you know that?
Weight. Yeah, I did know about that. You can get morning sickness too, can't you?
For the punish. I don't know about that, but I just know men put on weight because we are mentally preparing for less sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. That's weird how the body knows.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get back into go-to-market.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to step 2 in this newsletter, we're talking about assessing the fundamentals. So once we have a priority and we know what we want to tackle in those first 90 days, Eddie, what's next? How do you figure out specifically what needs to be fixed inside of that priority?
Well, this is where we plug our go-to-market efficiency pyramid, right? And we've got this all mapped out. You can check out the framework on our website. And when you look at the fundamentals, it doesn't matter what go-to-market motion we're talking about. It's all ICP and buyer personas at the very base, right? Like, are we targeting the right people? If we're trying to figure out why NRR is lagging, the first question is like, are we winning the right customers? Or are these companies that we can't, retain and grow? But then whether it's inbound, outbound, pipeline management, or NRR, the next piece is like, what is that customer journey and that process? So it's obviously different for each of those categories, but what is that step-by-step process? Let's say that we want to go outbound, okay? We've got our ICP and our buyer personas identified. We've mapped out our TAM, SAM, SOM. We need a target list, right? So how do we identify that target list? We start with capacity planning, which is good that we just talked about that. Like how many calls can our reps actually make in a day? What does a good call look like? Do we research the account first? Are we reading, their annual report? Like, because this is an enterprise sale, or no, this is an SMB sale, and like we do 5 seconds of research and we just go for it, or we're just robocalling. It's not something I'm a big fan of, but obviously, like plenty of companies do that. What is that step-by-step process to make an outbound call? How many calls can a rep make if they follow that process without skipping any steps? What is their actual capacity for outbound? Are they an SDR that has all day long? Or are they an AE that only has 2 hours a day to do prospecting? How many calls can they make? We can then figure out, well, here's the size of the target list. So now we've got our target list. We've segmented it. And then we have, built this into the system. So I'm hesitating there because I just skipped a step. But basically, all that stuff I mentioned is essentially what's the step-by-step process, right? If I'm going to make this really generic across all of go-to-market. With inbound, like What is an MQL? When do we route it to people? How do we route? Like, what is that step-by-step process? How many times do we follow up? How do we follow up, et cetera? Okay, cool. We've got that process mapped out. Then how do we need to change the systems and the reporting? What does the Salesforce report look like? That sets kind of like our very foundation. Then the next piece is, which we call fundamentals. Then the next piece is adoption. How do we get our team to adopt that process? So let's say, I'll skip over to pipeline management. Let's say that we have rethought our entire sales process for closing deals, and we've rebuilt everything in Salesforce, and we've got these new pipeline management reports, and we've trained the team on it. How do we get to a point where we actually trust the pipeline? We need to have a management cadence where we go in and we pull up the pipeline report, we ask reps questions about it, just pipeline inspection is what I'm talking about, to cut to the chase, and get to a point where everybody trusts the pipeline. That's the adoption phase. That's what you can do in 90 days. So in our example where we're going with outbound and pipeline management, we could do those two things in 90 days and get to a point where we say, here's the reports that show all of our outbound activities, as well as our meetings booked and our pipeline generated. And here's the report that shows how we're managing all of that pipeline. Rep by rep, team by team, is it good, bad? Are we where we need to be? Are we not where we need to be? Doesn't really matter in the first 90 days. If we can just trust those reports, that's a win. And then if what those reports show us are not good, we now have the ability to go in there and start to optimize that, which is sort of the next level of our pyramid. Maybe we need to change the ICP definition. Maybe we need to change the way that we research accounts or reach out or how we qualify deals. But like, we've got something that's at least being executed, and so now we can start to tweak it. But more than likely, just the simple fact that we've got everybody on our team doing things the same way, we're probably going to see some massive uptick, because presumably somebody on the team knows how to generate a deal via outbound and close it. So if we have talked to that person and reverse engineered the process, then and gotten everybody to follow that process, we're most likely going to see more success than having everybody just do things their way. And I think that that's the problem I see when I talk to CROs and they share with me what's going on in their company. It's like, they're not telling me like, oh yeah, we've got all these reps like making all these outbound calls and we just can't book any meetings. It's funny, like nobody ever tells me that. Like I hear the most basic problems. Like I hear people telling me, yeah, like we can't get our reps to like make outbound calls, or, you know, we have 55,000 leads that nobody's followed up with. I'm like, wait, first of all, how do you have 55,000 leads for a sales team of 20? That doesn't make any sense. Like these aren't real leads. What does it mean? Oh, well, we uploaded a list from ZoomInfo 4 years ago, 35,000 contacts into Salesforce. Hey, that's not a lead. So your fundamental process is broken. So these are the things that I think that you can do in 90 days. And it's hard to like rattle this all off on a podcast. If anybody's interested, check out the show notes, go to the Go-to-Market Efficiency Pyramid framework on our website, and we've mapped all this out bullet point by bullet point.
Mm-hmm. And, correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie, but just to sum all of that up and give people like the Cliff Notes versions. I don't know. You have Cliff Notes in the States? Craig's Notes?
We do.
What do you call it?
In the US, it's Cliff Notes.
Cliff's Notes.
In Canada, it's Cole's Notes.
Cool.
And you know why? Because Cliff called Cole and he was like, hey, Cole, I know you're doing some cool shit in Canada. I want the rights to your notes in America. And Cole sold Cliff his notes. I learned all this at Salesforce because I worked with a bunch of Canadians.
That's crazy. I've only ever known Cliff's Notes.
Yeah, well, we only know Cliff Notes. Wait, what? Did you say Cliff or Cole?
Cliff. I've only known Cliff's Notes.
Wait, really?
Yeah. That's why I'm like
You're
looking
Canadian.
at you like, what?
How's that possible?
I don't know.
So at least
confused.
the Canadians from Toronto, I know you're from another part of the country, they all talk about Cole's Notes. And I was like, well, who the hell is
Cole?
Know who Cole so I had to Google it.
Okay, well, so I was
There's
right.
There's a Wikipedia article on it.
The Cliff's Notes for this, basically, from what I understand, is that we're just trying to make sure we have the building blocks set up to get accurate, consistent, real data. And that in the process of doing that means we're making sure everyone is doing the same process. We have the process written out. It's all defined. It's the right process as far as we know. And everyone is doing it and everyone's executing on it. And we know that for sure.
Did you just Americanize your pronunciation of process for me?
I always do that. Or I try to always do that.
I like it when you say process.
Process. I don't know why I say process
Embrace your
sometimes.
Canadianism, Rachel. Look, I agree with what you said. I would change the emphasis. The point here is about getting your team to do the right things, right? Like if we could close deals without doing any of this stuff, if a CRO or a VP of RevOps is listening to this podcast, it's because like something isn't working, right? Like if we could just take a bunch of phone numbers and push it into like an auto dialer and print money on the other end, like nobody would care about what we're talking about here. The point is not to have perfect reports. The point is to drive revenue. And this is the thing that like really hit home with me in my experience at Salesforce, because Salesforce, at least when I worked for them, did print revenue. It was about saying like, look, we have figured out all the right steps that you need to follow in order to maximize your chances of creating and winning a deal. If you follow these steps, you're much more likely to succeed because we can see this in aggregate across the organization. So just do those steps. The byproduct is that we have good reporting. And part of that is like, hey, we have some requirements because part of our process to maximize their chances of winning is to have management step in and help coach you on how to win a deal. And we can't do that if we can't get visibility. But the goal is not to have perfect reports. The goal is to close deals. And the way to close deals is by having a standardized process that maps towards the things that most impact winning deals. And I'll give you a concrete example. In most sales, everybody wants to get to the decision maker and they want to present to the decision maker after having done proper discovery. So if I just take anybody selling anything and they are going in and they're like, I'm going to pitch my solution to the champion without the decision maker and without doing proper discovery, and I'm just going to hope that what I pitch at them resonates and they buy, almost any sales leader in the world would step in and say, no, you should run discovery with your champion, find a way to get to the decision maker, run discovery with them, then circle back and present your solution to both of them and make sure that your presentation matches all of the things that they said that they wanted. This is like generic sales 101, right? Okay, so now each product and each market is a little bit different and there's nuances, but as a general rule, our sales process is going to say, let's try to get in front of the decision maker and run discovery before we do our presentation, and let's make sure the decision maker is there for the presentation if possible. For 99 out of 100 products, that is going to increase our win rate in a sale. And so if we just do that and we just say, okay, let's get our reps to stop pitching to champions without doing discovery and get them to run discovery and pitch to decision makers, we're going to massively increase our win rate. And there's nobody that's ever spent any significant amount of time in sales that would debate that. But yet you see it every day with reps, especially in like SMB, for example, not doing this because they don't know any better. And it's hard to get in front of a decision maker. And so management has to have a way to hold them accountable to doing that. Quick pause. If you're getting value from this episode, I want to ask you a small favor. Take 30 seconds right now, open up the app you're listening to this on, and give us a 5-star rating. It sounds small, but it's the single biggest thing you can do to help us get conversations like this in front of more revenue leaders. While you're there, hit follow so you never miss an episode. Okay, let's get back into it.
So how do we know for sure that we've completed the fundamentals and adoption layer? Like, what can we see to know that we've finished that and we can move on?
My major barometer is just like, do we trust the report, right? Because there's gray area here, right? Like nothing's ever going to be perfect. You're never going to have the perfect process. You're never going to have the perfect execution. You're never going to have the perfect report. But if you pull up a pipeline report and tell me, yeah, I think all the deals that are listed as qualified in our pipeline are actually qualified. I think our reps are working those deals. I think we've got a real shot at winning not most of these deals, but a good chunk of these deals. I don't think that like there's any deals where we're chasing them and we just have nothing. That's a huge, huge win, right? That sets the foundation to say, okay, well, now we can actually forecast accurately. Now we can free up time for our reps to do more prospecting because they're not chasing deals that they can never win. Now we can start to tweak the process, or maybe that's good enough. And the thing that's burning over here is like our onboarding. Like, let's go pivot and switch to onboarding instead of, okay, wow, we did all these things. We increased our close rate from 10% to 22%. Okay, cool. Can we tweak that and go from 22 to 25? Yeah, we probably could, and we probably should. But if like CS is over here on fire, maybe we go tackle CS next before we try to like get that extra 3%.
Mm-hmm. And we're sticking to our like priority that we set out in the beginning, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that these things iterate quarter over quarter, right? Like businesses evolve and change really, really fast, especially the kind of businesses we work with, which are mostly B2B SaaS companies with, $50 to $500 million in revenue. Things change really, really fast. But if you've gone from a situation where, in our example, like outbound and pipeline management are just an absolute mess to, hey, we're doing a pretty decent job of this. Like we've got our process documented. Everybody's dialed in. They're doing the same things. We look at the report and like everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Seems to be working pretty well. Close rates up. We're booking more meetings. We're generating more pipeline. Okay, now let's try to do the same thing for how we follow up with inbound leads or how we onboard new customers or how we, address unhealthy customers or how we do expansion. That's going to have a massive, massive impact on the organization. And so if you break these things into 90 days, the way we typically work with our clients is we oftentimes have 90 to 180 days of visibility out to the things that we want to work on, right? Like I've already rifled off the examples here. I keep going into this like CS example of onboarding. Okay, next quarter, we're going to tackle onboarding. But still, like at the end of the quarter, we kind of look at this and like, okay, how far did we get? Do we need to keep working on this thing that we were working on in the first quarter? Are we in a good spot to address your question? And then do we want to pivot over to something else next quarter? And we almost always with our customers, like refresh this every single quarter and redo the roadmap for the next quarter to say, okay, like, are we aligned with the CRO? If there's a VP of RevOps at our client, with our VPs of RevOps, with anyone else that's involved, CMOs, heads of customer success, do we all agree that these are the things we want to accomplish over the next 90 days and the things we want to do to try to accomplish those things? Mm-hmm. Everybody gets sign off on that, and then we go focus on those things and try to say no to like all the random requests that come in. That's a big piece of this, right?
Yeah.
It's really easy to say we want to do all this stuff, and then you just get the flood of requests of like, we need to update this field in Salesforce so that like we can map to this report over here, and we're like, that's cool, but is this serving the top priority that we all established?
Exactly. And that brings us to step 3 in the newsletter/article, building the go-to-market ops roadmap. So that takes us like back a little bit to where we figured out what our priority is. We figured out the specific jobs we need to do in foundations and adoption. Now we need to make a plan to actually execute on that. And that's where the go-to-market ops roadmap comes in, which Eddie was just talking about. So what should actually go into a go-to-market ops roadmap for the first 90 days?
Well, first I would say if anybody wants to check this out, we have it on our frameworks on our website. Secondly, I would say we have a rigid format we use, but I don't think it really matters. I think as long as everyone on the team is aligned on something that's like written down, and specifically you have the ability to push back on stuff that doesn't fit into that roadmap, that's the biggest thing. But the format we like is essentially following an OKRs framework, right? You have your objectives and key results on the left, and you have your initiatives on the right. So as an example, the objective is we want to generate $50 million of pipeline from outbound this year. Okay, that's the objective. In order to do that, we need to redefine our ICP and buyer personas. We need to we need to do a capacity plan, territory plans. We need to segment our target lists. We need to redefine our outbound prospecting process. We need to build our reports in Salesforce. We need to have a management cadence of reviewing those reports and holding reps accountable to putting in their activity and, more importantly, generating meetings and pipeline. Those are the things that would go into that roadmap if, for example, we wanted to prioritize improving our outbound engine. And then obviously there's other examples for pipeline, inbound, net revenue retention, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And how do we set realistic metrics to track in that roadmap when we know we might not see really big changes in pipe gen or close rate within this 90 days, depending on our sales cycle and everything?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, I think when you talk about long sales cycles, say it's like an enterprise deal and it's a 9-month sales cycle, obviously, you're probably not going to see an uptick in close rates in the first 90 days. In fact, what you're probably going to see is a downtick, if that's a word, because you've gone in and you've identified all the deals that were never going to close in the first place, and you lost those deals. And so now your close rate actually looks worse because you have more close-loss deals in the denominator. But that's not a real impact. That's just you facing reality, right?
Yeah. Those deals were never real.
Yeah. But the big thing that I've always said is like, it doesn't matter how long your sales cycle is. There are leading indicators that can move much faster. So, okay, cool. You're selling an enterprise deal with a 9-month sales cycle. How many meetings did you book via outbound? It doesn't take 9 months to book the initial meeting. I mean, it might with a particular account, but what I mean is it doesn't take 9 months to see an uptick in meetings booked. It doesn't take 9 months to see that like, oh, wow, we actually trust our pipeline. Oh, wow, like these are the two things that we're looking for in order to have a deal that actually enters pipeline and is qualified. And those two things are in a good spot on every deal. Those are things that you can impact in 90 days. Those are things that sometimes you can impact in 1 day. And theoretically, right? Like you've got all this stuff mapped out and you're just like, we're going to go through our pipeline in 1 day and clean it out and make sure there's no deals in there that shouldn't be in there. That's possible. Then it might take 9 months to go and close the deals that remain in that pipeline.
Mm-hmm. And so why is having this sheet, this document, this go-to-market ops roadmap so important when it comes to, fielding ad hoc requests and potentially getting sidetracked with other things?
Well, let's imagine a scenario. We got a $200 million B2B SaaS company. We've got a CRO. We've got a CMO. We've got somebody heading customer success. We've got multiple sales leaders, possibly even multiple layers of sales leadership. We've got a VP of RevOps. We maybe have some other RevOps folks. We've got a Salesforce admin. We've got a HubSpot admin for the marketing tool. We've got all of these cooks in the kitchen together, right? And now all of a sudden, like the CMO pings the HubSpot admin and is like, hey, I need all these things like changed in HubSpot. What is that? Like, what's the default answer? No problem. I'm right on it, right? Well, if you just do that every single day, then you never make any meaningful impact on anything. I mean, this is something I fall victim to as the CEO in this company. Like, you guys sometimes push back on me, especially when we have like these kind of things in place. But as a general rule, like you and everybody else on the team are pretty good about just doing whatever I tell you to do, which I'm thankful for. But if I'm not thoughtful about what I'm asking you to do, then we end up just doing a bunch of busy work for a year and not accomplishing anything. Right. So we've got to have this guiding light. I mean, if anybody's listening to this and you're not familiar with OKRs, like we didn't invent this. This came from, I believe it originated before Intel, then became famous at Intel. Then I think John Doerr of Kleiner Perkins really made it famous and brought it to the Google team early in their days. This is a methodology across the entire business, not just go to market, that has shown an incredible ability to get an entire company centered around the absolute most important things. What is our objective? What are we trying to achieve? How can we actually make that measurable? What is the key result associated with it? And what are the initiatives that we need to tackle? We then need to say no to all the other things unless they're going to burn the house down, because there's always going to be a list of things that is longer than we have time.
All right. I don't have any other questions on go-to-market ops roadmap, and I don't think we're leaving anything out.
Yeah, I was going to say we're running up on time.
Yeah.
I don't want to go an hour and a half here.
Yeah,
Have we covered all the bases here?
I think we did. Yeah. And if any,
cool.
like Eddie said, if anyone's interested in learning more about the go-to-market ops roadmap, the link to that will be in the show notes. It is in our frameworks. So step 4 in the newsletter is on execution. So we talk about execution through the lens of both sprint planning in the go-to-market ops roadmap and reporting. So let's start with sprint planning. What does that actually look like in practice?
So the extension of what we were just talking about, at least for the way we do it, is sprint planning. Like, I'm not beholden to this methodology. Many people in the tech industry are familiar with sprint planning and Agile, probably more so than me. I just think it's really great to say, okay, like if a sprint is 2 weeks, we're going to take that 90-day plan and boil it down into 2 weeks, and we're going to sprint at that plan. For anybody not familiar with sprint planning, that's really what it is. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, we're going to evaluate what I got done, what wasn't done, and what we need to do over the next 2 weeks. I think the key here, and we do this in Asana. Again, I'm not like a huge fan of Asana or trying to promote that, but just having a project management tool, I think is really helpful. When that request comes in, somebody says, I need this field updated for whatever, you have to ask the question, is this higher priority than improving our outbound and generating $50 million of outbound pipeline this year? Like, is this thing you're asking for more urgent and important than that? Maybe it is. Maybe like the website is down And like, we need to like, all hands on deck and fix this because you go to our website and you just get like an error page. That's a really serious problem, right? I get it. Okay. So the answer is yes, this is more urgent and important. And if this pushes back our timeline and getting all this outbound stuff done by a week, so be it. Get this done now. Fine. Let's go do that. And we see that constantly. But a lot of times the answer is no, this can wait. If we really want to generate $50 million of outbound pipeline, we need to do all of these things. So the answer to your request is we'll put this in the backlog. Then we review that sprint every single week every 2 weeks, if the sprints are 2 weeks. And then at the end of 90 days, we review the entire roadmap. And so maybe that request is sitting there and we're saying like, this is something we really should pay attention to. But there's got to be some order to this. Otherwise, this is what happens with many RevOps teams. You just end up becoming this like IT help desk, and nobody's ever doing anything that actually moves the needle in terms of improving our revenue production.
Mm-hmm. And like, this is something that we do here at USC that I have found very, very helpful personally for like my productivity and knowing where I'm at in the month. We have like our monthly OKRs, which Eddie just mentioned. And, weekly we break down, okay, what can I do this week that will put me further ahead towards, my goals for the month or goals for the quarter. And then every single day we have like our daily top priorities. And we have in our Slack channel, we all like write out what's our top 3 to 5 daily priorities. And did we get our priorities done yesterday? And that might work for you, it might not, but it's really helped me just like really focus in on the specific steps and tasks that I can do on a daily and then weekly basis that move me towards that end goal. And I don't just get caught up in busy work or, these little tasks that come up randomly that I feel like they need my full attention right away when really they can be put aside for a little bit.
Yeah. And I've been really pleasantly surprised because I kind of pushed this idea and then you guys just kind of ran with it to the point that like I'm not even very involved with it anymore. Sarah's sending out the messages via Slack every day, like, what are your top priorities for today? I don't even look at this stuff because just the fact that I know that this is being done, I don't even care if I disagree with like what your top 3 things are for the day. Just the point is that you guys are thinking about it. I have all the confidence in the world that that's going to make everybody more productive. And it's something I'm doing on my own end. Where every single day I have a card staring me in the face that says, these are the things that I'm working on. And I actually have a single sheet of paper that has my entire year mapped out. And then of course, like I'm constantly like updating that and iterating it. And I mean, this is something that I didn't do this for a long time, but the first time I did it was in college. And my GPA went from a 2.4 to a 4.0 in one semester.
Wow.
And it was crazy. Just because, while simultaneously I was also taking much harder classes. And all it was is just I mapped out every single test, every single quiz, every single piece of homework, every single thing that I needed to do for all of my classes. And then I put them in chronological order. And I woke up every day and I was just like, this is all the stuff I need to do this week. I was like, oh my God, this is easy now. And I was like, nothing caught me by surprise. And the reason I got a 2.4 GPA prior to that is just because I was disorganized. Like that was it. And it's really amazing. Like, and I ended up graduating with like a 3.5 GPA when there was a point in time when I think when I started doing this, like I went to Indiana and I got into the university, but I hadn't gotten into the business school yet. And the business school was like telling me like, you need 2 semesters in a row of the 3.0 GPA or you can't get in. And I'm like, wait, hold on a second. I chose this university so that I can major in business. And now you're telling me I might not be able to do that? Mm-hmm. Shit. So yeah, being organized helps.
Yeah. And this is especially true for neurodivergent people. And I think in go-to-market ops and RevOps, any kind of like ops team, I'm sure you're bound to have a decent amount of neurodivergent people on your team, whatever that means, like ADHD or whatever. It can feel really, really overwhelming looking at an OKR or looking at like a roadmap saying like, okay, we need to do this thing. We need to execute on this goal. For people that think differently like that, they need to have it broken down into much smaller steps to be able to not get overwhelmed by the really, really big, huge task that's in front of them. So having these like daily or weekly lists of little things that you can accomplish to work towards that big goal can be super helpful. And I'm a neurodivergent person, so I've found that to be very helpful for myself.
Yeah, and I would even add, like, I think I get in trouble where sometimes I like doing this stuff and it's really easy to just get caught up, and you're building something in Salesforce, or I'm modeling something in Excel, or I'm mapping something out in a document or whatever, and I'm like, hold on a second. Like, I actually have a business to run. If we don't make money, I literally can't pay my rent. There's real like consequences here of not getting this done, and I got to take a step back and say, like, is this really the thing that I should be working on right now? Is this what's most important? And I would say that, like, a lot of people in ops, especially like the Salesforce admins of the world, oftentimes don't understand go-to-market as well as one might want. And I can't begin to tell you how many times I've interviewed people and they're like, oh yeah, I ran go-to-market over at this company. I did this, I did that. And you're like, okay, cool. Like, what was the revenue number? How much did it grow by? What are the major things you did to like move revenue? And they can't answer these questions because they don't know. Like, they literally didn't even know, the close rate of their new business pipeline, because that's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about building this new thing in Salesforce and building this report and doing this and doing that, and not able to spend time thinking about the bigger picture of, we're doing all this because we want to increase our close rate from 10% to 20%. I am amazed at how many resumes I see where it's like, I manage this and I was in charge of this and I was the admin for this. And you're like, okay, but how did you impact revenue? So I think it's really big, especially if you're a CRO listening to this and you've got technical people on your team that maybe aren't thinking the way that you do every day, to make sure that they understand what their North Star is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what does success look like at the 90-day mark? After we've done all of this stuff, how do we know we've actually made an impact versus just been busy?
So easy segue here. I want to think about reports, right? So I want to think about tangible metrics. So let's take outbound prospecting as an example. We want to get to a point where our team is logging the right number of prospecting activities into the right accounts. Now, whether you want to just look at total activities or you want to look at like account coverage, and you say, okay, here are our named accounts and like what percentage of these have we hit X number of times, et cetera. There's lots of ways to look at this. It ultimately boils down to, for me, a Salesforce report. Is that report in a spot where we want it to be? Meaning that like we can see that our team is executing. Is our pipeline report clean? That for me is the major win after 90 days, right? Because presumably if we finish that 90 days and like maybe it takes us until the last week, and then finally in the last week, we made the number of outbound prospecting activities we were supposed to do. We hit all the right accounts. We set up a few meetings. We've got a clean pipeline. We can dive in and we can see our reps are following all the right steps. What is that going to mean for next quarter? So we've got X amount of pipeline. We're following all the right steps. We should see, if our sales cycle is short enough, we should see improved close rate the next quarter. We should see more meetings next quarter. We should see more pipeline generated next quarter without doing anything except just maintaining consistency of the thing we just built. That to me is the win. It really comes down to like as simple as, do we have a clean pipeline report?
Okay.
That we trust.
And you mentioned in the newsletter too that reporting is driven by accountability, and accountability is driven by management. Can you elaborate more on that? Like, why can't the reports themselves drive accountability?
Because this is not how things work. Humans are fickle, complex creatures. I'll give you a concrete example from Salesforce, right? So when I came into Salesforce, one of the top priorities for management was forecasting accurately. Obviously, it was a publicly traded company even when I joined there. They were trying to grow at 30% year over year. They're making all these promises to Wall Street, and if they don't meet those promises, then the stock price takes a hit, which is really bad for everybody. So they were maniacal about pipeline, but all they did was ask for like, I think 4 things, if I can remember off the top of my head, is like, okay, what's the close date? Because that obviously impacts whether or not we even potentially close this deal within a given period of time. What's the dollar amount? What's the stage? What's our next steps? And potentially like, what's our mutual close plan, right? That was it. And the next steps, the mutual close plan, were kind of similar to each other. So you're really looking at 4 fields on the opportunity. And basically, the ask was, once you've moved a deal into stage 2, which is what was qualified for us, you have those 4 fields accurate, real time, all the time. So how do you get held accountable for that? my manager, his manager, his manager, his manager, all the way up to like the executive leadership team could and would inspect the pipeline at any point in time and on a quite regular basis. And all of a sudden you're getting what would now be a Slack message saying, hey, what's going on with this deal? I see that it's scheduled to close next week, but it's in stage 2 and your next steps are to follow up in a month. What's going on here? And you're like, well, what's going on here is I didn't update my pipeline. But what really happens there, especially, I remember vividly like seeing this like meme go around when somebody got this with like somebody's hair on fire, because that's how we felt. Like, oh my God, my boss's 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 boss just called me out on this deal that I'm mismanaging right now, which obviously got visibility all the way up and down the chain. So what do I want to do about that? Well, first I need to respond to this. I'm going to go clean the opportunity up immediately and respond and say, this deal isn't real. I had to loss it. Actually, like, I need to move this out for a month. Here's the next steps. I just didn't update my next steps, whatever it is. Okay, cool. So now we've got clean pipeline immediately. 2, I learned a lesson from that, right? And I don't even think it was me that got pinged with the burning hair emoji, but I'm sure I made this mistake. And you learn from it really quickly. It's like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's a consistent process where this is going to be called out. And it's a very reasonable ask, right? We had probably 20 fields on the opportunity outlining like the risk factors and all this other stuff. And like when you're working a big strategic deal, you get more eyes on it. There's more scrutiny. They want to see more of this stuff filled out. You're bringing other people into the deal to try to close it. Okay, cool. We're going to have a higher bar for how this is all filled out. But just the bare minimum of having those 4 fields filled out meant that like, okay, if we have the right stage and the right close date, then management could do like a weighted average forecast and they could figure out like, okay, like these are the number of deals we think we can close. If we've got the right dollar amount, we can have like the dollar amount of deals that we think we can close. If we've got the next steps, we have some level of assurance that the rep knows what they're doing, and that aligns with our ability to close that deal. If we see a deal that's in like stage 7 and it's set to close next week, but the next steps are ask the champion for an introduction to the decision maker, it's a huge red flag. That's a coaching opportunity, right? So when you've got all this stuff dialed in, you get to where Salesforce was when I worked there, which is, hey, we trust our pipeline and we can forecast within 5% accuracy. But so many organizations are not there because each rep is doing everything differently. And their management team doesn't have a cadence of going in and inspecting the pipeline and holding reps accountable. But this can happen really, really fast. I mean, this example I'm giving, how long would it take you to go and talk to a single rep and say, okay, you've got 15 deals. I need these 4 fields filled out and accurate on these deals. I can tell you the answer to this. The first time that I did this here at Union Square Consulting with the team that I was working with, I had 4 reps at this client company, and we were in like, I went to a meeting and I looked at the pipeline before the meeting and it was just completely blank, complete mess. I kind of chewed everybody out for it. I said, we're going to meet again tomorrow, 24 hours from now, and this all needs to be cleaned up. And the entire team had their pipeline cleaned up within 24 hours. Unfortunately for them, the way they cleaned it up was to close loss every deal because these were SMB deals that should have a 30 to 60 day close or sales cycle. And all these deals were 300 days old. So they like finally realized, oh, wow, I'm never going to close this deal. So I'm just going to dead this out, which is really difficult because now you're like, okay, so now we have a different problem. You clearly don't have enough pipeline to hit quota, which you didn't yesterday either, but now you know for sure. And now we really need to focus on prospecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that issue, we've talked about it before, the zombie pipeline issue. It comes up quite a bit actually, but yeah, the problem of having so much in your pipeline that's actually not real opportunities, and you don't even see that you have a pipe gen issue, a very significant pipe gen issue, until it's too late to even do anything about it. And you're just going to miss your numbers for that quarter or the next quarter.
Yep. It's an unfortunate problem. But the thing is like organizations that have fixed this, it's like now you can start to get into like the really advanced stuff. It opens up so much opportunity.
It's a hard pill to swallow having to close out like, I don't know, one of our consultants said he had to close out once, like, what was it, $10 million, $20 million in pipeline for a company. And it's like, that's a big pill to swallow. But like, you have to realize that 10, 20 million was not real. Like, it didn't exist. All it was doing was blinding you to the fact that you do not have as much pipeline as you should right now, and you should have been focusing and prioritizing your resources on different things. So anyway.
Well, even worse, I've seen like, I can think of a particular customer where CRO came in first 90 days, so taking it back to our topic, and he comes in the door and CFO doesn't trust him because this is what the previous CRO was doing. So he had to rebuild that trust with his CFO to say, hey, I'm new, I'm different. We're going to run things differently. And when I tell you that like this is the forecast and this is the pipeline, you can actually trust it.
Right. Yeah.
And that is something that like achieving that in the first 90 days is a big win.
Mm-hmm. That's another interesting thing too, is like what kind of baggage are you inheriting when you go into a new role that like your other peers might have taken on from the last person in your role?
Yep. Well, a lot of times the CRO is coming into a new job because the previous CRO, didn't do things the way everybody wanted. So anyway, I think we are at time unless you got any burning questions for me.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I can ask this one. So in 90 days, what's the one metric that should fundamentally change if you've done this right?
Well, I think the one metric that should fundamentally change if you've done this right is dependent upon your priorities and your goals. It's also dependent upon what's realistic within 90 days. So if we look at like pipeline management, for example, the one metric in a short sales cycle, if it's a 30-day sales cycle, like I'd like to see like a higher close rate, right? If we've got a 9-month sales cycle, it's going to be more difficult to do that. If we're talking about outbound, it might be like the amount of pipeline generated. It might be the amount of meetings. It might be account penetration. It might be the number of activities. I think it really depends on your motion, your priorities, how long cycles are. But I think that's a really, really important question for each and every CRO to answer going into this.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so I think that is it for this episode. If you're listening to this and you want to learn more about the go-to-market efficiency pyramid or the decision tree or the go-to-market roadmap, you can check all that out in the show notes. The links will be there to our frameworks. Or if you're just listening to this in the car and will remember it later, it's unisquareconsulting.com/frameworks.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
All right,
As
thanks,
always,
Eddie.
this was fun.
Yeah. See you later.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If this resonated, please give us a 5-star rating and a follow. It helps us reach more people, and you get our latest and greatest content without having to search for it. And if you're looking for hands-on help in go-to-market strategy and/or RevOps, please reach out to us. We help our clients with everything from annual planning to improving processes in go-to-market, implementing systems to support those processes, and go-to-market AI. We're always happy to offer a free consultation to help you identify the best opportunities to improve your go-to-market engine with or without our help. You can find us at unionsquareconsulting.com, and the info will be in our show notes.